So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Shayna Furlong. I'm the President and CEO of the Richmond Chamber of Commerce. The Richmond Chamber is Richmond's largest and most diverse business association, celebrating 100 years of history this year. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the Richmond Chamber of Commerce operates on the traditional territory of the Musqueam First Nation. They have lived on this land for millennia, and we are very grateful that we can gather here today. And I would also like to acknowledge any of the traditional territories that you may be joining us from today. Now, this election period has been quick, and I know our candidates have been incredibly busy. I would like to thank them and all of our participants for joining us today. We know April 28th is coming up very quickly, and their schedules are quite busy. It is a brave thing to do to put your name forward for public office, and we thank them in many ways. Now, to outline the rules, our candidates have up to 2 minutes for their opening remarks. And for each question, they'll have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond. Closing remarks will also be 1 minute and 30 seconds. Our timer today will be Alina Hussein, the Chamber's Events and Communications Manager, and she'll demonstrate what that time looks like right now. And as she does that, I'll continue with the rest of the rules. So this is a forum, it's not a debate, and we're encouraging the candidates to respond to the questions from their own and their party's perspective without ad hominem arguments. All the candidates running for office have been invited to participate in our event, and we're ensuring that each candidate is given equal speaking time and the same opportunities to share their platform with the community. As the Richmond Chamber of Commerce, we do not endorse any candidate or political party. Order of speaking for introductions and closing remarks is going to be alphabetical by electoral district, and closing remarks will be in reverse alphabetical order. Chamber staff, board members, and event organizers will not express personal political opinions during any official chamber activities, ensuring that personal views do not interfere with the Chamber's commitment to nonpartisanship. Any follow-up materials, including reports or social media posts, will provide a factual and unbiased account of the event, ensuring equal representation of all candidates. The candidates today have been provided the questions in advance. Now for the meat of the matter, what you are here for. I would like to introduce our candidates. We are going to do, as I said, alphabetical by electoral district, starting with Richmond Centre Marpole. And Martin Lee from the NDP, you are first.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Martin Lee. I'm running to represent Richmond Centre Marpole as your Member of Parliament with the New Democratic Party. Thank you to the Richmond Chamber of Commerce for the opportunity to speak with you today. This isn't just where I live. It's where I spend every day connecting with the business community, friends, families, and workers who make this riding run. From the shops on Granville Street to the manufacturers along Bridgeport, from the cafes in Marpole to the shipping firms by the Fraser River, I have seen how much is working and what's holding us back. Richmond Centre Marpole is a place of potential, but too often, the support we need from Ottawa doesn't show up where it matters. Housing is unaffordable, and businesses can't find staff. Transit hasn't kept up with job growth. Red tape is slowing down small firms, and federal grants are often designed for large companies, not local ones trying to expand. What I'm offering isn't slogans or ideology. It's a commitment to practical, smart, and evidence-based leadership. I will fight to bring infrastructure dollars home, support local job creators, and reduce barriers for businesses. I will ensure housing, childcare, and transit policies work for our workforce. Because when they can access these essentials, businesses suffer too. I understand that this election isn't about theory. It's about fixing what's broken so that Richmond can keep moving forward, and I'm ready to do that work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin, and thank you for sticking to time. Our next candidate is Michael Sisler with the Green Party.
Hello, I'm Michael Sisler, running in Richmond Centre Marpole. Thank you for having me. And I'm primarily here to show everybody, hopefully to their surprise, how robust and well-rounded the Green Party is with their thorough planning. We published our platform almost 2 weeks ago now, and it covers everything, some things that you may not even consider would be present in a Green Party platform because they're not necessarily environmental. We are covering all aspects of housing, employment, lowering taxation, raising wages, promoting small businesses in the area, and as well as major green infrastructures that Canada desperately needs. It will be a surprise for you. For example, we want to increase our strength in military spending and get that up to NATO recommendations of 2%. A lot of people just don't even realize that when they think of the Green Party. So again, I'm here to surprise you. During this Q&A, I'm going to mostly be reading off some bullet points directly from our platform because they are wonderful. And I agree with about 99.9% of the platform. As far as imposing my own thoughts and everything, I look forward to sharing that with you and hopefully communicating in the future. I'm calling for unity amongst all parties as much as possible. I'm calling for unity of all citizens, and I'm calling for cleaner, healthier life for all of us, including higher wages, cleaner air and water, and security. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Our next candidate is David Wong with the People's Party of Canada.
Hi, everybody. My name is David Wang. I'm the candidate for the People's Party of Canada. The role of the People's Party of Canada in the federal election and federal politics is to say the things the other parties refuse to talk about. And the big issue that is affecting all Canadians, and including the business sector across Canada and Richmond, is sadly mass immigration. That's going to be talked about probably not a lot by my fellow candidates, but it's something the People's Party of Canada has been very concerned about for many years and directly affects every aspect of our life. So when it comes to businesses in Richmond, you guys are all being affected by high property values, and that's housing your own personal housing for yourselves and your families, but also for your businesses as well. As property prices go up, your leases go up, your rent goes up. It's all affected by people. And as business people, you understand supply and demand. In the People's Party of Canada, we absolutely do understand that concept. We are a libertarian, free market party. We cherish the free market. We believe in Ottawa getting out of the way, reducing regulations, reducing red tape, and letting innovative entrepreneurs like yourselves do what you do best, and that is create opportunities for Canadians by employing them. We don't believe in handouts. We don't believe in picking winners and losers. We believe in ending things like corporate subsidies, which the Liberals and the NDP have been doing now for more than a decade. My colleagues on the Liberal side and NDP side will talk about new ideas, new innovations, but we've had them in power for 10 years now. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result. My suggestion, please consider the People's Party of Canada. Try something new. Thank you.
Thank you, David. As candidate Parm Bains has been unable to join yet, he will not be able to give his introductory remarks. We will go to Stephen G. with the Green Party.
Well, hey guys. So, it's not a good environment for business right now. Um, there's not a lot of things that you could invest in and be profitable, and we've seen a lot of restaurants. I think over 50% of them have already deceased over the past 2 years. And you can see it, one day you'd be eating at this restaurant, you come a month later, it's gone. And and it's not an easy problem to resolve because what we're facing with is the lack of this this it's a lack of disposable income for Canadians. So it doesn't matter what business you do, if there's no money in the pockets of Canadians, you're not going to make any money. And what we're seeing is a lot of reluctance to put more money into anything really. Real estate has been a big sector for Canada, but nowadays, the people around me, I'm hearing that they're stopping their projects. They're putting a halt on it. They're not pursuing future projects. We're seeing a lot of land that's being foreclosed. There's a lot of court sales. It's not looking good, and it's also um, you know you're faced with two problems because with the property prices so high, it's not good to invest in them. But then also you're not going to make a good return if you're just buying for renting because the rent is so low and the rent is also decreasing. So I think this is a systematic problem and it requires a careful and planned approach to fix.
Thank you, Stephen. Our next candidate is Kiefer Pellick with the NDP party.
Hello, my name is Kiefer Pellick. I'm the NDP candidate for Richmond East Steveston. Thank you, Shayna and the Chamber for hosting this, and thank you everybody for watching. I was born and raised here in Richmond, and I'm so proud to now be running for Richmond East Steveston. This is an incredible riding. I know everyone always says that their riding is the best, but when I think about this one here, it really is kind of a microcosm of Canada because we have the largest small craft harbor here in Steveston. We have incredibly productive farmland. We're one of the biggest producers of cranberries in North America. We have a really strong, robust industrial land where we produce plywood, where we produce the machines for building the things that we need, the housing that we need. This is an incredibly strong economic powerhouse in our country. And that's why I'm so proud to be running here. But as business owners, as investors, that we are in a time of uncertainty. We were talking before the meeting started about the Trump tariffs and the dangers that we have and how people feel like they can't invest because they don't know what's going to happen with the market or which direction the Trump administration is going to go from day to day. So in this election, the NDP are really championing people because the economy is about people. And there's a lot that we can do to make sure that businesses and small businesses at any scale are thriving right here in Richmond, as well as the people who power those businesses, the owners, the investors, the workers. We also want to make sure that while we're in this time of uncertainty, we are not making cuts to the services that we need, the services that make Canada, Canada. Things like our healthcare, dental care, pharmacare, childcare, which is really an economic powerhouse that makes it's both an equity issue, but it's also an economic driver as more people can return back to the workforce. So those are the things that we are really platforming this election, and I look forward to talking about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kiefer. Our final candidate to give introductory remarks is Zach Siegel with the Conservative Party of Canada.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. My name is Zach Siegel. I'm the Conservative Party of Canada candidate here in Richmond East Steveston. And I was raised in Richmond and lived here nearly my entire life. My wife and I are raising our daughter here now. And in a place like Richmond East Steveston, where there's so many new immigrants and folks from all around the world coming every day, my family has very deep roots in British Columbia, going back many generations. And I have to talk about how in the history of Canada, people in previous generations persevered through so much adversity and hardship to be able to pass down Canada to the next generation. And they persevered through this hardship because they believed there was always the possibility of a better tomorrow. And I think it's not cliche to say that for the first time, a lot of people, especially young people, don't believe there is that possibility of a better tomorrow. And housing costs have become so unaffordable. Our economy is strangled with red tape and high taxes, and it's impossible to build anything anymore in this country, from big projects to houses, to pipelines to mines. And we really need to start looking at things differently to get our economy back on track. And this will help people of all generations, and most particularly young people who I think feel so frustrated and disillusioned with the status quo. And I think that's what this election is about for young people, particularly all the young people in Richmond East Steveston, to be able to fix our housing crisis properly by working with the cities, by addressing our challenges with economic growth through cutting red tape and cutting taxes, and making this a a strong economy that benefits all. And you know, as Kiefer mentioned, there is so much opportunity in Richmond East Steveston, from agriculture, fishing to farming, and we owe it to them to make it productive and as strong an economy as possible. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Zach, and congratulations to all of the candidates for adhering so well to our time. Thank you. Now getting into our question and answer period. My first question I will pose to all candidates, and it's something that's really at the heart for a lot of businesses. How do you balance the need for effective regulation with reducing red tape and overregulation, perhaps, for Canadian businesses? I am going to start this time in the order of the names I see on the screen. So I'm going to start with Michael, Green Party of Canada.
We want to strongly support businesses and remove unnecessary interprovincial trade barriers and regulations so we can sell Canadian products across our own territories and provinces easier. We'd like to reduce the paperwork burden on small businesses by eliminating duplicative tax filings and red tape, introducing full digitization of SME tax preparations. We'd also like to streamline approvals for SMEs to adopt new technologies, ensuring they remain competitive. So yeah, we are very, very much supportive of smaller businesses, as well as agriculture and other bigger industries, but we'd like to migrate them into a green economy. The green economy is growing in leaps and bounds, even without the subsidies. And we know that we can enhance that growth, bring in better livability for Canadians and profitability for companies as well. So there are a number of ways that we can decrease the red tape that various businesses have to go through, primarily the small businesses with taxations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Staying in the Richmond Centre Marpole, I will next go to David.
Yes, I'm here. Oh, for the same question regarding the regulations. Yes, so in regards to regulations, thanks to the Liberals and the NDP as they've been in power, businesses have been severely stifled by regulations. For example, we need to build pipelines. Canada has the second or third largest deposits of oil and natural gas on the planet. Russia is currently using the fact that Europe and China are borrowing large amounts of oil to perpetuate their horrible war in Ukraine. Canada could be the one supplying that oil. So regulation is something that the Liberals and the NDP have put in place that is severely stifled in their Bill C-69, which puts all kinds of regulations in place to stifle the building of pipelines, even though the Liberals will propose that they are actually deeply concerned about the environment, but they've actually used Section 9210 to push forward the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which actually Canadian taxpayers have to buy at a cost of $4.5 billion. So if you want a party that actually believes in reducing regulations and promoting businesses and innovation, the People's Party of Canada is the party that champions that more than anyone else. And that also includes, for example, removing supply management. Supply management is a cartel on the dairy and poultry industry. President Trump wants us to put it on the table to negotiate. We have to be willing to do the bold things that will make real change possible for Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Martin, posing the same question to you.
Yes, thank you. We hear everywhere from Mitchell Island to Granville Street, business owners saying, we're not afraid of regulations. We're just tired of being punished by unnecessary delays. Let's be clear, the burden of red tape doesn't fall on corporations with legal teams. It falls on the small business owner managing payroll and compliance before 8 a.m. That's why I'm proposing a consultation and community-oriented approach to regulation, such as eliminate duplication, streamline processes, and publish clear timelines that departments are accountable to. I have spoken with tech firms that lost months and tens of thousands of dollars simply waiting on paperwork that should have been routine. We will consolidate permitting into one digital portal. We will hold departments account with service standards, and most importantly, we will involve Richmond's business leaders in shaping what comes next. Because if we want business to thrive, we have to treat business owners like the meaningful stakeholders that they already are. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Moving to our other electoral district, Richmond East Steveston, I am going to start things off with Zach. And as a reminder, the question is, how do you balance the need for effective regulation with reducing red tape and over-regulation for Canadian businesses?
Hi, thanks. Yeah, there's certainly an urgent need to cut regulation, and we have a great proposal in our platform to cut red tape by 25% and bring in a one-for-one rule. With every new administrative burden, there'll be a reduction in a burden, and for every new monetary burden, the same reduction as well. And this is so critical for a country that has become so over-regulated, and we see it with major projects as well. You know, through Bill C-69 and other red tape, it has become nearly impossible to get major projects built in this country. And there are mines that have been in the review process for nearly a decade. And we have several policies to address this through a one-stop shop where permitting and approvals go through one window now, shovel-ready zones that have pre-approved permits, and a national energy corridor for things like transmission lines and pipelines and that sort of thing that we can get expedited approvals for. Because the best response to the challenges we're facing with the United States is a strong country. And if we can get our resources to market and get these major projects built that have been strangled under the last 10 years, that can be so effective in making Canada a stronger country on the world stage.
Thank you, Zach. Next, I will go to Kiefer. Same question.
Yeah, I think Martin did a really good job of highlighting some of the NDP's ideas writ large across the country, but I really want to dial down to some of the things we can do around regulation that are affecting businesses and builders right here in Richmond. So a really good example, and the Trump tariffs have really highlighted this, is that it is easier to sell goods to the states sometimes than it is to our provincial partners. So the NDP is proposing a task force to work with the provinces to make sure that we streamline some of those interprovincial barriers. When we talk about regulations on that, sometimes it's things like credential recognition. Sometimes it's things like making sure that liquor sold or produced in BC complies with regulations in other provinces. Those are the things that we want to streamline and make sure that we have high standards, we're keeping people safe, we are meeting our environmental needs, but we are also making sure that we're supporting Canada through a Buy Canada, Build Canada plan. The other thing that I want to mention, really important for here in Richmond, is building. One of the things that the NDP is proposing is the Canadian Home Transfers Program, where we would help fund communities to build the housing that we need. And part of that is we would be rewarding communities that help build more of the homes we need, that kind of cut down on the local zoning issues that we have here, that would help streamline really the building that we need to help meet the demands of our community.
Thank you very much. And finally, Stephen.
Yes. So, I mean, Canada is a country that's filled with regulations and red tape and has a very strong government presence in almost every sector of the economy. And if we look at, say, like Zach mentioned, the mines, I know some owners have already gone out of business. They just couldn't, it just wasn't profitable for them to keep going, or they were faced with a lot of issues in terms of regulation. And another issue with mineral extraction is that we don't actually have a lot of infrastructure ready for more remote areas. So it's literally not possible for them to go there, and it's hard for a business to do that on their own. But we should be incentivizing more investment into extracting these sort of minerals and building a stronger economy. Also, another facet of this regulation is I don't know if you guys know Canada Buys. It's where a lot of stuff is outsourced for the government, and it's not a clear red tape, but they require a lot of things like you have to be approved business to use it. And I think if that opens up, it'll save a lot of smaller businesses.
Thank you, Stephen. And I'll take a moment just to plug for all members of the chamber. There is a procurement overview document on the members only section of our website. So we encourage you to go there as well if that's something that you are interested in. My next question I will direct to the candidates from the Richmond East Steveston electoral district. And the question is, what federal measures would your party support to increase housing supply and improve affordability for working Canadians? We are going to start now with Kiefer.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. And honestly, this is why I'm running. This is the biggest issue that the people I'm talking to on the doors are facing. Affordability, both for housing and for daily costs. On the housing front, there's a lot that we can do as a federal government. I already mentioned the Canadian home transfers to make sure that we are helping incentivize municipalities to build the homes that we need. The other thing we can do is use federally owned land to build more publicly owned and purpose-built housing for families that are just growing up in our community. We haven't gone in the co-op business for ages. Also, housing that's built for specific needs like seniors or people with disability concerns. That's housing that doesn't necessarily get built through the private market. And finally, clamping down on corporate landlords that are buying up existing rental stock. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to ban corporations from building housing and new rental buildings. We do want to incentivize that. It's really important. But we do want to make sure that the existing affordable stock that we have now doesn't get bought up and the rent prices jacked up for workers that live in our community. The other thing that we are proposing is a GST break on essential goods, the daily costs that a lot of people face. Things like groceries, home heating, cell phone bills. I did have a new baby as well, and the cost of diapers is through the roof. Those are the things that we can do right away on day one to bring down the costs for everybody in Richmond and Canada.
Thanks very much and congratulations on your new baby. Next, I will go to Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, this is an issue that is on the front line, but I think the solution to it is a bit more nuanced than just putting more housing in Richmond, right? Because right now it's not even profitable to be buying a property and renting it out. Even multifamily homes, you're getting what, like a two 2 to 3% cap rate versus the interest of 4 point something percent. So you're losing money by buying these, and the only developers that are building it are getting a special um, interest from the government. So it's not easy to just build, and I think we're wasting money by just pouring more government capital into this. I think we should be opening up more regions like Maple Ridge, like Chilliwack, and also building more infrastructure in other cities. So we've already seen a lot of people move to Calgary. They're moving to Toronto, but Calgary mostly, right? So I think when people shift over to other major cities, then it's going to reduce the strain on BC. Or I mean, BC has a lot of other land as well that we can develop. So there's no I don't agree with increasing density on roads and infrastructure that can't support this.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And Parm Bains, Liberal Party of Canada candidate for Richmond East Steveston, has just joined us. Thank you for joining, Parm. Our question right now, going to the candidates from Richmond East Steveston, is what federal measures would your party support to increase housing supply and improve affordability for working Canadians? And next, I will go to Zach.
Thanks. Yes, and such an important question. On the question of housing affordability, there's several ways we want to tackle this, and one of the ways is we need to work with the municipalities, and the municipalities hold a lot of the cards in this through taxes, fees, development charges, and permitting. And we want to incentivize them to reduce fees, taxes, and development charges that can cost nearly up to $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of a home. And we want to use the federal government to reduce that and then match it as well with cutting the GST on new homes under $1.3 million. And those two programs together could reduce the cost of a new home by $100,000. Additionally, we want to use federal land to build more, and also incentivize cities who build more by rewarding them with a system that rewards cities that build more as our approach. And with housing affordability is one part of the affordability question. The other part is wages and cost of living. And our wages and salaries in Canada and British Columbia, and certainly in the Lower Mainland, have not even remotely kept pace with how the exponential rise in housing costs. And so we need to improve economic growth, tax cuts, regulation cuts, and just improve the economy in general, so we can start seeing real wage increases that we have not seen in so many years, so people actually have the paychecks to afford rent and mortgage.
Thank you, Zach. And just as a reminder for everybody, our candidates have a 10-second grace period before they're muted. And our last candidate from this electoral district, Parm, would you like to answer the question?
Yes, thank you, Shayna, for hosting this, and to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this all candidates meeting. Yeah, the issue of housing, I think that we all know we've been tackling this problem for years now, and looking for ways to ensure that we can work with all levels of government in a more seamless way. Because it does involve everyone to come together to find solutions for this. Very quickly, I can talk about the injection of the infrastructure fund that will allow for infrastructure improvements to be made by the federal government, which typically DCC, development cost charges, are pushed down onto builders and developers, and we will be able to reduce their development cost charges by 50%, working directly with Metro Vancouver Region. On top of that, there's another plan to use the MERB program, which you may recall, that's been talked about in more recent years. It's an older program where limited partnerships will be allowed, so private injection of capital can happen, and everyday Canadians can participate in building rental homes with a general partner and get a tax rebate or a tax incentive.
Thank you, Parm. Thank you to all the candidates for your thoughtful answers to that question. Moving on, this question will be posed to our Richmond Centre Marpole candidates. And I'd like to speak about new economies. And the question is, what policies would your party implement to encourage private sector innovation and attract investment in emerging industries? And I'm going to begin with Michael.
Well, if it's green, we'll support it. Pretty much. More specifically, we'd like to increase research and development funding to 2.2% of GDP, bringing Canada in line with the OECD average. We'd like to require Statistics Canada to conduct an annual technology survey to track innovation trends and investment needs. And that will also work locally in Richmond as well. And we'd also like to hold the small business tax rate at 9% on the first $500,000 of active income, and much innovation comes from small businesses. We'd also like to preach a little bit of awareness. Small business innovations, that's the cornerstone of innovation, basically. So much innovation starts with smaller businesses, pre-IPOs and so forth. And even in my writing, we've got General Fusion They have one of their offices here. That's a company making tremendous strides in nuclear fusion technologies. So we need to support these innovations even fuller. Wave technologies have not even begun to be explored fully, but it can take one person with a great idea to come up with these kinds of innovations, and we need to support that because the status quo, it's got us where we are now, and we'd like to be better. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. For this question, David, I will go to you next.
Okay, again, so I just want to just pivot quickly back to the question about the housing, just briefly. I just want to mention that, again, once again, the other parties refuse to talk about the key elephant in the room here, and that's mass immigration. And that has been compounded by the Liberals and the NDP by bringing in 5 million people, which is the equivalent of Saskatchewan, Manitoba, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, and PEI over the past 5 years. We had a housing crisis before the lockdowns happened, and under Justin Trudeau, the Liberals, and Jagmeet Singh and the NDP.
David, just to redirect you.
I'm going to go back to that issue. Yes,
Thank
in
you.
regards to the issue of the emerging markets, the People's Party of Canada will support industries by getting rid of unnecessary red tape. So I meant to Bill C-69, the fact of the matter is that is making it impossible to develop energy projects. And my colleague on the Conservative side mentioned mining project. Canada has tremendous resources in mining and oil. Regulations are stifling both of those industries. In order to unlock that potential, we need to remove those regulations, and the People's Party of Canada is the party to do that, and also cut spending. The People's Party of Canada wants to balance the budget. If we can balance the budget, which the People's Party of Canada has a plan to do by cutting things like foreign aid, by cutting things like the endless money to war in Ukraine, we can actually balance the budget in 1 year, and then we can actually give it back as a tax surplus, so we can actually give money back to Canadians, including business owners. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And finally, Martin.
Yes, thank you for the question. Innovation is alive in Richmond Centre, Marpole, but too often it's outpacing the support it receives. Across our riding, clean tech startups, advanced manufacturers, and agricultural tech entrepreneurs are ready to grow, but blocked by outdated tools and red tape. We'll change that with the Canadian Innovation Investment Fund. Direct support for skill-ready firms in clean energy, artificial intelligence, and sustainable manufacturing. Not a maze of grants, real capital for real businesses. We'll simplify research and development tax credits, making them upfront and usable for companies under 100 employees. And we will expand local talent pipelines through co-ops and applied research at KPU, BCIT, UBC, and Langara College. Finally, we will fix procurement. If Richmond companies are building solutions, they deserve a fair shot at federal contracts. No more gatekeeping. Innovation doesn't just happen in tech parks. It happens in workshops, farms, and labs. Let's back the builders who are already leading right here in Richmond. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. My next question is going to go to all candidates, and it's one of the hottest topics during our election period and any conversation today, as well as our work at the Chamber. And the question is, how should Canada respond to increasing trade protectionism from the United States, including new and newly threatened tariffs? I'm going to start with Parm Bains.
Thank you, Shayna. So the tariff plan ultimately for the Liberal Party is to have a maximum effect on USA and with a minimal impact on Canadian consumers. A 25% tariffs on 30 billion worth of US goods has already happened. But moving forward, I think we need to look at what we can do internally within Canada to open up trade barriers that we have within. So already the Prime Minister Mark Carney, when he first came in, implemented the trucking regulations to be streamlined. And along with that, the labor mobility 50% of trade barriers have been addressed, but we need to get that to 100%. So internal barriers will be one of the key focuses of making sure that people can buy Canadian, working with retailers, agriculture producers, manufacturers, food and beverage, all of those things within Canada, and making sure that Canadian products can move across the nation more freely. So that will be a key issue. Beyond that, we'll be able to build the infrastructure and work with the premiers to ensure that Canadian projects that have national interest get built. So that is how we will be addressing that.
Thank you, Parm. Next, I would like to go to Stephen G. with the Green Party of Canada.
Right. So, I mean, we have 70% of our trade with the USA, but if we look at it closely, we're really not affected if we stop trade with the USA. Not that we're going to, but so we have $45 billion of aircraft that we buy from them, $45 billion of machinery, $38 billion of electronics, $35 billion of mineral and fuels, and $19 billion of pharma. So aircraft, instead of buying Boeing, we can just buy Airbus, right? And in terms of machinery, a lot of it is made overseas anyways, right? They get assembled in the USA and then it gets shipped to Canada. Same thing with electronics. I think China produces like what 70-80% of the electronics. So they're importing it to the USA and then we import it from the USA. With minerals and fuels, that's an interesting one because a lot of the minerals and fuels, the crude comes from us, right? We're sending it back down, especially on the East Coast, where we don't have a direct pipeline within Canada. So from Alberta, it goes down to the USA, it goes to like Texas or something, and then it gets refined and gets sent back here. So if we just refine it ourselves, then we don't need the USA to refine it for us and import it back. In terms of pharmaceuticals, again, 80-90% of that is produced by India and China. They import it to the States. They do, sometimes they'll do some finishing touches and then we import it. So all in all, we're not that affected.
Thank you, Stephen. Next, I'll go to Kiefer, NDP.
Yeah, thanks. I think for response to the US tariffs, there's really kind of three big buckets here. So there's Canada, there's US, and then there's the world. So for Canada, we can work right away to help protect Canadian jobs. We want to bring in a jobs war room with industry and unions and different folks within the economy to really make sure that we are protecting the jobs that Canadians need. We can do that by bringing down some of the trade barriers between provinces, like we mentioned. When it comes to the US, we do want to bring in retaliatory tariffs. You have to stand up to bullies. Otherwise, they're just going to keep going and the demands will keep getting worse and worse and worse. We also want to bring in an ad campaign within the US that really targets US citizens that are affected by tariffs because they're the ones who pay the tariffs. And we want them to know that when their groceries go up, when their supply costs go up, it is because of their administration. We would also cut off critical mineral supplies that the US desperately needs. You know, Elon Musk has been talking a lot about this, and he's got the president's ear. This is one way that we can really interject that. And then finally, there's the world. We rely a lot on the US and their economy. They have been allies for decades since we've been a country, but we are in uncharted territory and we need to be diversifying our economy to make sure that Canadian goods and services are going to markets around the world. Countries that are also affected by Trump's tariffs that are looking for trading partners. And that's where Canada can step up and make sure that our goods are there to fill that need.
Thank you, Kiefer. Next, I'd like to ask Zach Siegel.
Yeah, it's such an important question, and and has been discussed. There's the element of responding appropriately to this, and then also what we could do here. And we need to look at it if we create a fund to help workers impacted by this, doing things to spur our economy, like cutting taxes on Canadian-made vehicles, so we can be competitive. Those sorts of things. But it's also so critical that Canada be as strong as possible to stand on our own 2 feet to get out from under their thumb and these threats. And that means green lighting and expediting these very important projects. We are selling our oil at a discount to the Americans, and we should be getting pipelines built and getting it to markets overseas. When there were countries in Europe, in the Middle East, or countries in Europe and other parts of the world who came to Canada asking for our LNG, and we had turned them down, and instead they then were reliant on Russia. And that shouldn't be happening in a country like Canada. We are blessed with an abundance of natural resources, and the best thing we can do now is get these projects built. We've got a great plan with shovel-ready zones, a one-stop shop, and a national energy corridor, which can really expedite these projects and bring home an abundance of wealth for Canadians.
Thank you very much, Zach. Moving to our other electoral district, Richmond Centre Marpole, I'm going to continue with our alphabetical theme here and call on Martin Lee first.
Thank you. Yeah, Donald Trump is back in the White House, and with him, the tariffs are back. This has already been felt in Richmond Centre Marpole. I spoke with a local exporter who had to lay off part-time staff after U.S. distributor canceled a contract due to increased import duties on products. This isn't just a foreign policy issue. It's a local economic one. We need a federal response that's proactive, not reactive. We will begin by building resilience here at home. That means investing in domestic manufacturing for inputs like packaging, clean tech components, and agricultural food processing. We will expand support for small businesses to access new markets, particularly in Asia Pacific, through financing, translation, and logistics planning. We will also engage strategically with U.S. counterparts to defend fair trade, including using reciprocal measures when needed. But the priority will always be protecting jobs and market access here in Richmond. Our riding depends on cross-border trade, but we can depend on unstable leadership south of the border to keep things moving. We need to prepare Richmond businesses for volatility and make sure Ottawa has your back when international politics interfere with local paychecks. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. The next candidate I will call upon is Michael Sisler.
When dealing with the U.S., I'll tell you number one thing, and just keep a cool head. Unfortunately, they are causing disruptions, terrible disruptions, but they're also trying to cause stress and dissension within ourselves, and we can't do that. It's impossible to react to somebody who doesn't even know how to respond to themselves. As you can see, every day is changing with the news, so we just have to build our strength at this time and wait to see how the end result will be. How do we build our strength? Echoing what Stephen G says, we need to the Green Party, on their platform, they actually want to ban the export of unrefined resources. Keep our crude, refine it here ourselves, ship it across the country, hopefully through trains, not through pipelines, as needed. But this could also go for fishing and agricultural products. Anything that we can put on the value added cost of refining it or processing it fully before, not just sending it out as a raw material, will be a strength for Canada. So we also need to build strategic oil reserves, timber reserves, mineral reserves, basic resource reserves, so we won't be caught short without these things that we need. We also need to strengthen relations with other countries such as Mexico, China, and India. China and India in particular, we have some reparations to do diplomatically. So let's get that done. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Our last candidate to respond to this question will be David Wang.
Hi, everybody. So the People's Party of Canada's strategy to deal with President Trump and the tariff situation is not to go mano a mano with President Trump. It is to go to 0% tariffs. We would not impose any tariffs on U.S. goods because the simple fact of the matter is the United States economy is 10 times our size. We send 75% of our exports to the United States. It is unrealistic that we will be able to find sufficient trading partners across the globe to make up the difference for right now. What we need to do is we need to challenge President Trump. Kiefer mentioned Elon Musk. Elon Musk does have President Trump's ear. And what is Elon Musk's recommendation? It is to go to 0% tariffs. We are the only party proposing a realistic solution to this issue. And let's try to understand this. The Liberal Party is trying to use President Trump as a strategy. He is the boogeyman to scare people into thinking of voting Liberals again. 10 years of failed policies that have put us deep into the hole. We are more than $1.5 trillion in debt. 69% of our GDP has to go to service our debt. That is preposterous, right? And what we need to do is we need to establish relationships again with President Trump. And the People's Party of Canada is the only party that has been talking about putting supply management on the table. None of the other parties will talk about it. If we can put real meat on the table, Donald Trump will negotiate with us. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you to all of the candidates for your thoughtful answer to that question. I know it's been on everybody's mind lately. Now, something that a few of you have already touched on, but looking globally, what foreign and trade policies would you support to deepen Canada's economic partnerships and strengthen trade ties with countries in the Asia-Pacific region? Again, you have up to 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond. If you feel you've already addressed that, you don't need to take all of that time. But again, because this is such a critical issue to Richmond businesses, we will be asking all of the candidates this question. I am going to start in the Richmond Centre Marpole electoral district with Martin Lee this time.
Thank you. Yes, Richmond Centre Marpole is perfectly positioned to lead Canada's engagement with Asia-Pacific markets. We have entrepreneurs with deep cultural ties, an international airport down the road, and a strong base of export-ready businesses. But right now, the federal government isn't doing enough to help those businesses reach their potential. I visited a Marpole-based business who has received interest from overseas buyers. However, they have to stall as the current international trade uncertainty is overwhelming, and they help navigating tariffs. We will change that. We will expand the Trade Commissioner Service and regional export assistance offices to focus on small and medium-sized firms. We will fund dedicated export readiness grants for Richmond businesses, not just multinationals, so they can meet packaging standards, skill production, and attend trade missions. And we will negotiate smarter trade deals with enforceable labor and environmental standards, so Canadian businesses are not competing against unfair practices. Asia-Pacific trade is not just about shipping more containers. It's about enabling the local firms who need help turning inquiries into contracts. And that's where federal leadership needs to show up, and that's the work I'm ready to do for Richmond. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Staying in Richmond Centre Marpole, I will go back to David.
Yeah, so we have to understand that trade, that there is a very large community of members of Richmond who have close ties with the Asia region. And again, the People's Party of Canada's policies will benefit all Canadians, including entrepreneurs of Asian descent here. And that means that we are the only party who will end to balance the budget. We need to cut things like foreign aid. I know that seems like something that Canada needs to do, but we need to prioritize. Instead of building roads in other countries, we need to build roads here, and that's more than $13.6 billion. We need to cut things like the war to Ukraine. Endless wars in Ukraine is not helping anybody. We will cut the $20 billion we've already spent, $5 billion projected annually for the next several years. We would cut that spending as well. We would cut the equalization formula across Canada. We spend more than $30 billion annually on the equalization formula. We would take that to half and challenge the provinces to do more innovation themselves and tap into their own natural resources. Now, again, when it comes to trade with the Asian Pacific region, making it better with Canada, People's Party of Canada's policies always prioritize the free market. That is our bread and butter. That is what we believe in strongly. We would champion all companies that wanted to engage in trade practices with the Asian region. But Again, we need to make sure that fossil fuels that Canada has in abundance are being provided to the Asian region. They're buying it from Russia right now and using it to perpetuate a terrible war that can end if Canada taps into its natural resources. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Sorry, I've lost my place. There we go. Michael Sisler, would you mind answering the question next?
As I touched on earlier, we do need to strengthen our diplomatic ties with China and India. These are major populations. One is an extreme world power, one is a growing world power. So not only with those countries, but we need to form an economic alliance with other Japan, Australia, South Korea, New Zealand, and other ASEAN nations. Thinking about tariffs, we'd like to reduce the tariffs, the Green Party that is, would like to reduce the tariffs on solar panels from China. But we can't sacrifice all of our tariffs. I'm sorry. We need to protect our own auto industry. So while I am all for bringing in less expensive electric vehicles from China, and I do think 100% tariffs are a little outrageous, that's me personally, we do need to put some tariffs imposed for our own protectionisms. So that's about it. For developing economic alliances with other countries, and everything else has been touched on. Asia is our friend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Now moving to our other electoral district, Richmond East Steveston, I'm going to kick us off with Kiefer Pellick.
Thank you so much. On sorry, on foreign markets, we are kind of in this moment of uncertainty here with the States, and markets and investors hate uncertainty, as I'm sure many of your members know. But Canada is a stable trading partner. And as other countries look at the States and the tariffs and the uncertainty coming from the administration there, we have this incredible opportunity to reach out, to form new trade agreements with them, and to make sure that our goods and services made here in Canada are going to a diverse economy worldwide. Some of the things that we can do to kind of help spur that innovation, it's already been mentioned, but with the Canada by Procurement program, we can make sure that we're investing in Canadian companies to really innovate products that are then going to be wanted around the world. We're also an abundantly rich resource country, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be trading with other countries around the world, not just our friends to the US border. I think I'll leave it at that.
Thanks very much. Moving right along, I will go next to Zach Siegel.
Yeah, one of the most important ways we can deepen trade is with getting our natural resources to market. And there are LNG projects across the country and mines and all these sorts of things that have been tied up in bureaucracy and red tape, and in Newfoundland and in Labrador, and phase 2 of LNG Canada here in BC. And getting these to markets and in other markets in Asia is great for Canada, and it reduces other countries' reliance on coal as a less carbon intense energy source. And so there's all these things, like I had mentioned earlier, with getting rid of Bill C-69, creating shovel-ready zones, a national energy corridor, and making sure we greenlight these projects fast. Can improve is a great way to get our energy to market, and is good for relations with other countries. We've also talked about CANZUK, the Canada, New Zealand, UK deal with all 3 countries, and there's issues in Ontario with the Ring of Fire and all the minerals and platinum and copper and all these sorts of things that the rest of the world wants. And we're not using it to its full advantage. And there's things like, simple things like getting roads built to get trucks and infrastructure back and forth. And these are all things we've got to fix if we want to develop our resources to their full potential and get them to other markets.
Thank you very much, Zach. Moving along, I will go next to Stephen G.
Yeah, so I think in terms of doing business overseas, it's not as much importing as exporting our goods and services, because we don't have a market. We've got 30 million people and they're all pretty broke. So it's more about getting our services out, and a lot of the candidates have already touched on our natural resources, but I think there's one thing that we can really, hammer down on, and it's our research capabilities, because we have one of the most educated populations in the world. We have the best and brightest minds. In fact, the Turing Award winner for this year was a prof in University of Alberta. But these are not translating into results, because after we produce these bright minds, they go to China, they go to um, they go to the US, they work for the major tech companies. They're not staying here. So we should be more open to having research facilities in Canada, and we shouldn't be so restrictive. Um, I think our biggest barrier to trading with Asia is the marine, is the USA really. But I think we should lift restrictions on Huawei. And in terms of auto production, if we can produce for GM, which is on the way down, we might as well produce for Tesla or BYD, which has AI self-driving capabilities that we can build these infrastructures and get better results.
Thank you, Stephen. Right under the wire. So far, we haven't had to mute everyone, so I appreciate all of the candidates for your time management. The final candidate to answer this question will be Parm Baines.
Thank you, Shayna. Look, if you look at it, we do need to take advantage of what we've already done over the last 6 years. Just 15 new trade agreements were signed. This includes the ASEAN. We've seen new deals with Indonesia and even South America and Ecuador, and 50 plus nations that are ready to trade with us. So one opportunity we have here is to get goods to market. There's been investments made in the Port of Churchill by the Premier of Manitoba, and we can move things to the east through the Hudson Bay. So I think we need to look at, of course, how other programs that we can take advantage of. That $25 billion export credit facility that can support Canadian businesses getting into new markets. And this has been successful with having facilitated the sale of potash to Bangladesh, and water bombers to the European Union. So this is just a couple of examples. But moving on, a lot of those agreements that we've done already, and keep building on those, but now building that infrastructure also to meet those needs. And what we're prepared to do is cut the red tape from the federal side and recognize provincial processes to speed these things up. So those are just some examples. And there's other new trade deals with Mercosur, and there's 9 trillion combined with ASEAN and Mercosur that we can access. So I'm optimistic, and we are optimistic that we will get those things done.
Thank you very much. We have time for 2 more questions if we split between the electoral districts. And I'm going to start with Richmond Centre Marpole. The question for these candidates is, do you believe balancing the federal budget should be a priority? If so, how would your party achieve this while maintaining essential services? I know a couple of you have already touched on it. And I am going to start with David.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, again, I did touch on that earlier myself, and the People's Party of Canada believes that it is critical to balance the federal budget. To be very clear, both the Liberals and the Conservatives have provided their costed platforms, and under the Liberal Party, they would be running a deficit of $100 billion, as I understand it, over the next 4 years, while the Liberals is about $160 billion. You guys can correct me on my numbers, but there will be deficits for years to come. The People's Party of Canada is the only party that is willing to do the funding cuts necessary to balance the budget in 1 year. Again, we would cut foreign aid because we need to build roads in Canada, prioritize development in Canada, not in other countries. 2, we would end funding for the CBC and CTV Global News. The People's Party of Canada gained 850,000 votes in the last election, and the CBC has not done a single story on the People's Party of Canada in the past 4 years. It is questionable whether or not they are serving the interests of the Canadian people. Equalization formula, we would cut it in half to about $15 billion a year because provinces need to innovate more instead of relying on Ottawa for handouts. The People's Party of Canada doesn't believe in picking winners and losers. So the only party that wants to balance the budget in 1 year and will do it is the People's Party of Canada. The other parties believe in spending and taxing or spending and inflation. That is irresponsible. Everything comes from proper fiscal management. The People's Party of Canada is the only party willing to do what it takes in order to balance the budget in just 1 year. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Moving along now, I'll call on Michael Sisler.
Yeah, I want to balance the budget that will increase the value of the Canadian dollar and be good for our economy in general. We want to redirect some of the spending that hasn't worked, particularly subsidies to big oil and the ultra wealthy, and give those subsidies to the small businesses and the less fortunate. We do want to cut excessive spending, not with the CBC. The CBC is our culture, our community. I learn about news from across the nation. But some of the cuts we want to make, the PM's office budget is 10 million. We want to cut that to 1 million. We want to close tax loopholes, offshore accounts, and other mechanisms to keep Canadian money in Canada. That way it's getting spent, our value is increasing, our goods are getting bought, our businesses are successful, our banks are successful, and everything will go back to us. So yes, we need to decrease that budget, and there are a million ways we can do that, but not cutting the CBC. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. To finish this question off, Martin Lee.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we believe, yes, balancing the budget matters, but doing it responsibly matters more. In Richmond Centre, Marpole, I've met business owners who understand that cutting essential services in the name of austerity only drives up long-term costs, both for families and employers. I spoke with a dental clinic operator in Marpole who told me that most of her staff rely on public childcare and transit to make it to work. When services like that are cut, she doesn't just lose access, she loses employees. And replacing them, that's where real costs and productivity lose kicks in. Our plan balances the books without cutting what works. We will close costly corporate tax loopholes and eliminate ineffective subsidies, particularly to highly profitable fossil fuel companies that doesn't need public money. We will implement a modest wealth tax on fortunes over $10 million and a windfall profits tax on companies that profited massively during crisis. At the same time, we will invest in services that reduce long-term fiscal pressure, affordable housing, universal prescription drugs coverage, and early learning programs that help more parents rejoin the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. Our next question will be the final question and answer before we begin our final statements from the candidates. And sorry, my document has just closed. Here we are. The question is, what specific changes would your party make to Canada's immigration system to better support workforce needs and economic growth? It's a very hot topic. We're going to start today with Stephen G.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we need a plan and we need to figure out what we want by importing all of these people and how many people we need to import to meet our demands. So if we want to compete as a manufacturing hub, then we probably need a lot of people so that we can lower wages and produce, and bolster our manufacturing facilities. But that also needs for us to reduce regulation in terms of lower wages. And so, we need to figure out what it is that we want as a country, right? And I think that might not be the best way to go about it. So whatever the case may be, we need to have a plan, build what we need to sustain the people that we're importing. If we're importing 5 million people, we better make sure that we've got 5 million units of housing, and we've got doctors, we've got all of these um, other things that we need to sustain them, right, before we actually go ahead and bring these people in. So that's all.
Thank you, Stephen. Next, I'll go to Kiefer Pellick.
Yeah, immigrants really built this country, and I'm gonna talk a little bit of my own history here. My great grandpa came here in the 1910s, 1912, and he had to pay the head tax to come into Canada. We had an unfair immigration system that targeted specific people. And then once he was here, he was able to build a life for himself, go back to China, start a family, come back to Canada. But my grandpa, my great grandma, and my great aunt were not able to come to Canada to live that life here in Canada with my grandpa until the Chinese Exclusion Act was repealed. Immigration helps build our country. It has to be fair. We have to make sure that we have the resources, the housing, the services to meet that demand. But honestly, we do need people coming to Canada with our birth rate dropping. Just some statistics that really kind of paint this picture. 1 in 4 healthcare workers in Canada are immigrants. We need more people helping to alleviate wait times within our country, in our ERs, throughout our healthcare system. 1 in 5 business owners are immigrants. Those are the people who are helping respond to the Trump tariffs, helping to get our goods to market. So we do need to make sure that we are housing people, we have the right resources, but immigrants are really part of that engine and part of the solution to that problem.
Thank you very much, Kiefer. Next for this question, we will go to Parm Baines.
Thank you, Shayna. Look, I think we all recognize that, immigrants built this nation. New Canadians have fueled economy even through tough times. They kept businesses going. We saw through COVID, and they support our economic growth. But do we need to be mindful of how we control it? Of course. We also need to understand that the federal government's in the demand business. We work with our provinces. We look at the labor market assessments that they provide to us, the data that they provide, the needs that they have, the skilled needs that they have, and we honor those needs. So what we do need to do looking forward, because I believe that there was a lot of abuse of the system, and many members in the caucus, as we work with our local communities, we understand that, we see what's happening, and we continue to pivot and dial down things as needed. But if we're looking to build and build up, we do need those skills. We need to accredit those skills. We're creating a framework for a pan-Canadian skills accreditation for medical health workers. Beyond that, we're looking at bringing the numbers down for students, let's say, less than 5% of Canada's population by the end of 2027, from a past high of 7.3. And then also to ease the strain that we may have on our public infrastructure, our permanent residents, the PRs, at less than 1% of Canada's population. So that's a plan moving forward.
Thank you, Parm. And the final word on this question will go to Zach Siegel.
Thanks. A major crisis facing this country is the doctor shortage and shortage of family doctors and other healthcare professionals. And we can start to address this by expediting credential recognition. This is something that's been talked about for years, but nothing's been done, and it's so important. And there's tens of thousands of doctors and nurses and other professionals that we could get into the workforce rapidly if we fixed our credential recognition system. There's other issues around, Canadians who go to medical school abroad and not having residency spaces when they come back. So they go elsewhere and we lose them. So our party has been, and Pierre Poilievre, since his leadership, has been talking about a Blue Seal program, to have a national, international credential recognition program that will expedite it, and it'll be a uniform process similar to the Red Seal program. And we also want to have look at funding to help people with loans to help complete their certification. And this could add tens of thousands of healthcare professionals to our healthcare system that is in such urgent need of more doctors, nurses, and other professionals. And this is a great way we can use the talents and skills of new Canadians, so they're not sitting on the sidelines.
Thank you very much, Zach, and thank you to all of the candidates for their thoughtful answers to our questions. It is now time for closing remarks. Candidates will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to provide their final statement for why they deserve your vote in Monday's election. And we are going to go in reverse order from our opening statements, which means we will start with Zach Siegel.
Thanks for having me this evening, and thank you to the Richmond Chamber of Commerce. And our businesses in Richmond are so critical, and this is such a critical election where housing, affordability, crime, opportunities have all gone in the wrong direction in the last 10 years. And I grew up in Richmond, and I care a lot about the community, and it's so tragic to see so many young people who are losing hope and opportunity in the next generation. And that's why this election is so critical, and it's about change and really addressing change and really addressing the housing crisis through working with the cities and addressing affordability through real tax cuts, and finally and properly getting our resources to market that the world wants, but that are strangled with red tape and unfair regulations. And that's why this election is so critical. And so thank you very much for having me. And again, I'm Zach Siegel, the Conservative candidate for Richmond East Steveston. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Zach. The next candidate on my reverse alphabetical list is Kiefer Palick. Kiefer.
Yeah, thank you, Shayna, and the Richmond Chamber for hosting this. Thank you to everyone who's joined us and to the other candidates for sharing your ideas. I just really want to note that throughout this whole time, I've been taking notes and listening along, and there's so much that we agree on across all the party lines, like conservative, liberal, Greens, everyone. Things like how we need to address the housing crisis, things like credential recognition and bringing down interprovincial trade barriers. Those are the things that I hope we work on together across party lines post-election. But we are in an election, and really this one is about choices. And we have two before us. We can either choose to invest in people, in the services that we need, in the businesses that help our communities thrive, or we can choose to sell off land and cut the services that people rely on and create more uncertainty in this time. And we keep harking back to it, but uncertainty is a killer for business. And with Trump and the presidency down south, it's creating a lot of that uncertainty. It's creating a lot of division that has come up into our country. But we're also seeing a lot of people come together. And it reminds me of a quote, and it's going to be a little cheesy, but bear with me. I'm often left with Jack Layton's farewell remarks to Canadians when he said, "Love is better than anger, hope is better than fear, and optimism is better than despair." Well, optimism is such an incredible tool, but it's not a passive thing. It's about choices, it's about seizing the moment, and it's about coming together. So thank you so much. I hope I can count on your support, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Kiefer. Next, we will go to Stephen G.
So, I mean, we have a lot of liquid assets and even more assets that are tied up in property that's ready to invest, especially in Richmond. But it's just been so disappointing, and the returns are so bad, and people are losing money when they're investing into any sort of business nowadays that they're not investing. So I think what we need to do from the government's perspective is to show a way forward so that individuals and companies can utilize these assets to create wealth for Canadians.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Our final candidate in the Richmond East Steveston riding is Parm Bains. Parm.
Thank you, Shayna, and thank you to the 7,700 plus members of the Chamber of Commerce for giving us this opportunity. Look, it's a huge honor for me to be able to serve this community for the last 4 years where I was raised and I grew up here. So I was able to work hard and work with all levels of government to deliver on things that were important to the community. I understood the key priorities that were needed here, over $640 million worth of important infrastructure, supply chain corridor pieces, active living pieces, housing agreement with the city. And those are foundational pieces. Jobs were created, and I want to build more on top of that. I'm committed to cutting the red tape and making sure our workforce gets the breaks that they deserve. So we'll continue to work on increasing competition, injecting private capital. We can't have government continuing to put things forward. We want to make it easier for private investment to take place in the country, like the MERB project, which would also build more homes. So I think there's a number of different key ideas, and like you first said, like we all want to do similar things. We all want the same things, but it's the ideas and the plans that we can move forward with and deliver on. And that's what we're prepared to do. That's what I'm prepared to do. I'm willing to work hard every day for this community, which I love so dearly. So I wish everybody can get out and vote for Palm Bains on Monday, April 28th. Thank you.
Thank you. Right before the cutoff. Well done. Moving along now to our Richmond Centre Marpole electoral district. The first candidate I would like to hear closing remarks from is David Wang.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much to the Chamber for having us, and for all the members of the Chamber of Commerce for listening to us today, and to my fellow candidates for their ideas. I especially like Kiefer's points about being positive and Jack Layton's final remarks. The People's Party of Canada, though, we want to make sure that everybody understands that probably the biggest issue in this election is immigration. I know I talk about that a lot. Let me be very clear. I'm the child of immigrants. Immigration is essential to Canada's prosperity. However, we need to make sure that immigration is done at a sustainable level. 5 million people over the course of 5 years is not sustainable. The Liberals propose 400,000 people a year. The Conservatives propose 250,000 people a year. We say we need zero immigration for several years so we can build up the infrastructure, housing, doctors, nurses, infrastructure to be able to accommodate everybody. Also, the Liberals were famous for saying diversity is our strength. That was their slogan for many years under Justin Trudeau. The People's Party of Canada says unity is our strength. We need to be a unified country. We need to have Canadian values. We need to make sure that everybody feels like they're Canadian. So we need to give time for new immigrants into Canada to integrate into the country, learn one of our official languages, know what it means to be Canadian, learn to love this country. We've had the lost decade is what this past decade has been referred to. That's thanks to the Liberals and the NDP. Voting different is the smart thing to do if you really want change. Please vote David Wang, People's Party of Canada, in this election. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. The next candidate we would love to hear from is Michael Sisler. Please go ahead.
I'd like to echo the call for unity, but express a bit of disappointment in the other parties, because we have a plan. The Green Party of Canada has a plan to cover all of these things too. We just nuance it with our own climactic survival. If the sea levels rise, what happens to Richmond? It's what, 5 meters high? You can imagine the devastation. We are not beyond having incredible fires hit the greater metropolitan area of Vancouver. It gets hot and things burn. We've had great fires on new developments in Vancouver and so forth. So what I'm saying is we all want the same thing, but none of it is going to matter unless we pay attention to our fossil fuels burning and hurting the environment like we are. That'll be one of the most destructive things that can happen to us together. Unify against the climate no matter what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And last but not least, Martin Lee.
Yes, thank you again to the Richmond Chamber of Commerce for hosting this such important discussion. I have spent this campaign listening to the concerns of this community. And what I have heard from small business owners, employers, and workers is clear. People want practical leadership that understands how local economies actually work. We're not talking in the hypotheticals. We're talking about permit delays that stall expansions, about housing that drives away good staff, about missing daycare spots, rising insurance costs, and underused federal programs. You have heard tonight that I have a plan rooted in specifics of Richmond Centre Marpole, such as building affordable homes near Bridgeport Station, accelerating smart infrastructure upgrades, improving transit access for shift workers, and supporting the businesses that drive trade, tech, and talent here in our riding. You have also heard that I will approach this role as a partner, someone who listens, advocates, and delivers. I'm not here to give speeches. I'm here to get to work. And I'm Martin Lee, and I'm asking for your support to bring practical, business-focused leadership to Ottawa on behalf of Richmond Centre Marpole. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Martin. And it looks like we're right on target for time right now. I'd like to thank all of our candidates again for joining us, as well as all of our participants on the call today. This video will be posted latest tomorrow morning on YouTube and our Facebook page. Feel free to share that with your friends and colleagues and family. Election day is Monday, April 28th. If you have any confusion about where or how to vote, you can visit elections.ca. That's the Elections Canada website, www.elections.ca. And I'd like to thank the candidates for taking the time to join us today. As I said, it is the final days of the election campaign. We know how busy you are. We know how much work it is to run a campaign. And though everybody's approaching the issues from their own perspective, we really commend you on the bravery and strength it takes to put your name forward, to run for office, and to lead. If you are elected on Monday, expect to hear from the Richmond Chamber of Commerce as we work with you to advance the interests of employers and workers here in Richmond. To everyone on the call, I would like to remind you, if you're a member, that the Richmond Chamber of Commerce's annual general meeting is Tuesday, April 29th, the day after the election. We will be kicking off our 100th anniversary in earnest, electing our own board of directors, and celebrating with a bit of a party at Nook Co-working Space. Our golf tournament is set for June 26th. We would love to see you there. And tomorrow morning, I'm hosting a coffee chat online focusing on trade. So that's a casual conversation. Please join me if you have time. As always, events are constantly updating at richmondchamber.ca. And for my last act, I would like to thank my colleague, Alina Hussein, our Manager of Communications and Events, who has been managing the timing so well today. Thank you, Alina. Thank you to all of the candidates, and I hope everybody has a great afternoon.